I'm not hearing you. Let's see if we can.
Hi, Al.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Very good, very good.
I don't.
Are we the only two so far? I didn't hear you, so I'm wondering if mute, stop video, share, raise hand. Wow. Okay, let's go on. Most of this. Mute. Raise hand. Oh boy. Layout meeting moderator unmute mode. Switch audio. Wow. I still can't hear you, but you can hear me though, right? Okay, let's do this. It says you're muted, I believe.
There. Can you hear me now? Oh,
Hearing to order. My name is Duff. I am the presiding councillor for this district, District 5. And I will read the letter of nomination and then we'll start the hearing. And please correct me if I say your name incorrectly. From the governor, dear councillors, I'm pleased to nominate Benjamin Adeyinka Adeyinka to the position of Associate Justice of the Housing Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm enclosing the nominations, closing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Maura T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth. As the presiding, I'm going to take this out of order today because we have a lot of witnesses and we have witnesses who want to testify via WebEx in opposition to the nominee. I will take the opposing witnesses first. And so are we there? Attorney Sarah McKee?
Yes.
There?
Yes.
Okay,
Councillor.
now, I will outline for you when someone is testifying for or against, they are supposed to have direct knowledge and direct interaction with whoever the nominee is. I will certainly allow you each to testify, but because this is going to be a long hearing and the councils themselves are limited in the time, each witness will be limited to 5 minutes. So you may start.
Thank you, Councillor Duff.
You're welcome.
My name is Sarah McKee. I am I've been a member of the District of Columbia Bar for 45 years. I retired to Massachusetts from the Department of Justice and served as Governor Deval Patrick's appointee for law to the Registry of Deeds Reform Commission in 2013. I am recovering from a stroke. If you cannot understand me, please let me know. I met Attorney Adeyinka 7 or 8 years ago and just had a very cordial discussion with him for maybe even an hour about Massachusetts law of non-judicial home foreclosure. But I am very troubled about this nomination based on my 10 years of volunteering with the Massachusetts Alliance Against Predatory Lending. I have read Attorney Adeyinka's amicus brief for the Supreme Judicial Court in Bank of America Trustee v. Rosa, and he argued there, based on New Hampshire law, that judicial challenges to non-judicial foreclosures must be brought prior to sale to give third-party buyers certainty of title post-foreclosure. He was willing to protect, he wanted the Supreme Judicial Court to protect future buyers at the expense of Massachusetts homeowners, as he must have known at that point any Massachusetts homeowner who tried to challenge a non-judicial foreclosure before the foreclosure auction sale had the case dismissed for failure to state a claim on which relief could be granted. I'm troubled also by the time that he spent at the Orleans law firm, 2009 to 2013 or 14, in which he's trained staff and vendors and advised managing attorneys on changes in the law. Orleans is one of the 2 largest law firms that do foreclosure law in the state. And their general practice can show, I think, Attorney Adeyinka's knowledge of foreclosure, non-judicial foreclosure law, and his willingness to comply with it. And on this record, his training was not good. For instance, in the title theory states such as Massachusetts, there, as you all well know, there are 2 documents for the mortgage loan: the mortgage and the mortgage note. The mortgage gets recorded in the registry. The mortgage note does not. It could be mutilated. It could be lost. It could be with a document custodian 6 or 8 states away when the mortgagee needs it in order to prove up the debt to foreclose. In the Eaton case in 2012, the Supreme Judicial Court addressed
Just a
the
point of
issue.
order, May.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
I'm just going to ask if we can keep it to the nominees qualification, like a general law of foreclosure. We've all been through this before on other nominees, and we understand it's a big issue. That's not really an issue for the council, it's an issue for the legislature. So I'm asking if we could, as a point of order, if the witness could be instructed to limit her remarks to the nominees qualifications.
Yes, that's what I asked at the beginning. Anyone that testifies should only be speaking about the nominee. Okay, continue.
Thank you. I think that the nominee's ability to train the lawyers in his firm in foreclosure law is relevant. And I will submit a written submission with these points. I would only touch to close on a matter that perhaps another will speak more fully on, and this is the requirement by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that law firms that represent it in foreclosures conceal the fact that Fannie or Freddie owns the mortgage.
Okay,
Conceal that
I'm
fact.
sorry, attorney, you've gone past your 5 minutes,
Oh,
so.
Thank you
have to-
very much.
Okay, thank you. And so the next witness is Jay Lively. Mr. Lively? He's not there. Okay, next witness will go to Alton King. Mr. King, are you there?
You hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Tell me when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
My name is Alton King of Long Meadow. I've been a defendant in my home in the court for over 5 years now. And while the SJC denied me under indigency, they acknowledged that the right to cure letter did not look legal to them and that the foreclosure could easily have been void. Having learned a bit about Mr. Adeyinka background, I'm very concerned. The housing court already does not address that they do not have jurisdiction to give my titles to the plaintiff after a supposed foreclosure. Lots of us similarly situated have been made indigent, had our health damaged, etc. Therefore, we don't have expensive lawyers. The foreclosing banks have very expensive lawyers, and we're on our own. So the way we get treated as non-attorneys creates a massive unfair disadvantage for defendants. I understand that tenants are mostly without lawyers, maybe 75%, but the homeowners, defendants, are without licensed attorneys almost 100% of the time. During COVID, especially, we all ended up using online dockets as primary means of e-filing documents and to get them back. I understand that the online documents on other courts, but not under the housing courts, anybody can go in. When you see a document you want, you can file it and file for it rather, and get it. You click on the image and your document. However, in the housing court, they discriminate against people who are not licensed lawyers. Licensed lawyers apparently have their own portal to go in and get this stuff, but the vast majority of us who are defendants and those of us who are fighting for our homes don't have lawyers. So the wealthy bank lawyers gets his stuff immediately. They go and they can do whatever they want, but we cannot get our documents. I understand that the Mass Alliance Against Predatory lending actually complained to the administrators of the State Housing Court Division. Mr. Adeyinka is highly placed there. In fact, his name is on the letterhead that was sent back in response. While the letter from Judge Sullivan expressed sympathy with our position, he apparently didn't see equalizing the status of both parties so that that would be a priority. Instead, he said that there were three things that you can ask the court to do, the clerk to do, and giving him to get your material immediately. But this strategy would only work for people who got the letters or knew someone who knew about Judge Sullivan's letter. How is everybody else supposed to know that and post on, it's not posted on the docket for anybody. Most recently, the Housing Court has now taken the images away. So those of us who aren't lawyers, now we can't even see the image or the document next to the docket entry anymore to know if there's even a document entered. So this is a massive discriminatory system. I can imagine how many people have lost their home because they didn't get their documents timely. The other side gets it in days, sometimes weeks or two in advance. You are at, or we are at, a distinct disadvantage already, not being lawyers. This just takes you out. Mr. Adeyinka was part of receiving Maple's direct complaint and has been a
Okay,
part
Mr.
of.
King, I'm sorry, you've gone past 5 minutes now, so I'm gonna have to ask you to stop and we'll go to the next witness. Thank you. Okay, the next witness is Grace Ross. Is Ms. Ross available to speak?
Unmute.
Is Grace Ross available?
She's having difficulty with her mic.
She's muted. She's muted.
Yes.
I'll give her another few
It's not, it does not say I'm muted.
You're unmuted now.
Is Grace Ross available to speak?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let's go. You
Okay.
have 5 minutes and we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Well, so I think that Mr. King was trying to get at, there are basically two historical roles that Attorney Adeyinka has had that have given a history, I guess three, for us to address. And that's why people are trying to address things that I guess folks aren't making the connection for. But one of them is that he's been in a top administrative position in the administrative side of the statewide housing court. And Mr. King was getting at attempts to equalize through his office the access for pro se litigants, which in the court he's going into is a huge percentage of the defendants. And it has created a clear disadvantage. Similarly, the courts have been ordered to post visually, where you can see it easily when you're in the clerk's area, your right to translation, your right to file for a reasonable accommodation under disability, and your right to file for indigency. Those are critical things for defendants in housing court, especially those who are there pro se. But through the entire COVID period, we've had to be on e-file. On Zoom, and we've had to e-file. The rules are wildly different for those who are lawyers and those who aren't, and those who aren't are far more likely to get sick and not have a colleague to transfer the case to. They have to get a reasonable accommodation to even be able to participate. In his role as an administrator, he has not facilitated that the Zoom sessions started with like a flash page to tell you that you had a right to translation, you had a right to reasonable accommodation for disability, you had a right to confidentiality around indigency filings. And the housing court, again, e-file system, is the only court we've dealt with where when you go to e-file something, you cannot impound it. So your right to confidentiality under medical information, your right to confidentiality under indigency information, the housing court has literally put you in a place where you either might get reasonable accommodation to save your home, if you're post foreclosure, to save your entire history of your home. You have to choose whether to expose your private medical information and your private indigency information or not. And this is not a choice people should have had to make. And the administration of the housing court has put people in that situation. We reviewed Attorney Adeyinka's filings in the SJC cases, which I believe Sarah McKee was trying to address. He made arguments that mostly lost at the SJC, and we want to know how he's going to adjudicate against his own argument when he's a judge. But importantly, he argued, and he is correct, that housing court doesn't have jurisdiction over deciding title. And that is a distinction that the SJC made in the Rosa decision, that obviously housing court is going to have to assess whether a plaintiff's claim to title is valid or not, because without it, they don't have jurisdiction. But that's different than if there's a controversy over the plaintiff's claim to title, thinking they have the authority to decide that. Thankfully, Attorney Adeyinka has taken the position that housing court does not have that authority, and he's looked at the principle that if other courts have the authority and you don't, then you're not allowed to decide it. But we would like to know what he plans to do about that, because Attorney Carvajal, when he was in front of you, said that he understood that it would have to be transferred to Superior Court if there was a title controversy where the plaintiff was claiming title and we were showing they didn't have it, but he's actually never done that since he's been sitting. So we would like to know what Attorney Adeyinka will do in those situations. And I won't try in this short time, but we will send testimony about the details of things that he argued in his briefs that were lost at the SJC, and we want to know what he's going to do. Third important issue is that he trained lawyers who have put documents into the registries and filed in court things that are direct violations of the law. I will send...
Okay, excuse me, Ms. Ross, you've gone over 5 minutes now, so I'm going to have to stop you and see if the other witness is available to speak.
Can I finish my sentence, please?
Yes, you may.
That they were filing documents into the registry that demonstrate violations under strict scrutiny, strict compliance, that render foreclosures void, and we would like to know how he plans to rule on the trainings that he gave people that are opposite of what the law holds, where he will have plaintiffs in front of him who do not have title. And
all right, thank you very much. You've gone almost 6 minutes now. Is Mr. Lively available to speak? You wanted to testify?
I will get him. I don't know why he's having problems with
Okay,
his...
because we will see if there are any other witnesses against. If not, we will close this portion and go to the other witnesses. So if he wants to speak, he needs to be present.
I know.
Are there any other witnesses? Well, we give him a chance to show up because the hearing started a half an hour ago. Are there any other witnesses here presently opposed? Again, any other witnesses here presently opposed? Okay, there are none.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Lively was never sent the link, and that's why he's not on. I'm talking to him right now.
That's not of my concern, to be frank. I don't. Yeah, it's on the webpage. We don't send the link, as far as I know. I mean,
yes.
If he wants to testify, it's up to him to show up, not for us to bring him here.
No. Madam
So,
Chair, we were all sent links. We were told.
don't know anything about that, Ms. Ross. I'm chairing the hearing. Do they typically send a link?
Aaron sent him an invitation.
He was sent an invitation. We just checked with the staff. He may not have understood what it was, but he was sent it. I'll give him another minute to check his email as a courtesy.
I can take them out of order.
I want to wrap this up and get to the hearing.
You're delayed on the video. He's listening to the video, so he would have just heard now that he can go check the link. I forwarded mine, hon, but I don't know if it'll let you open mine.
It's on the website. It's available to anyone.
The video is available to everyone, but not the link.
Invitation is not. The invitation is sent separately.
Oh, the invitation was sent separately to him. We did receive it. At least on the end, our end, he
So
received
it
it.
bounced, hon, and I just forwarded you mine.
If he's not able to get on, he can certainly send in his written testimony.
Mine? Sign in. No,
Is he
just click on the web browser and click on join as guest. I'm sorry, he is signing in right now.
Okay. Certainly willing to indulge.
Are you in? Well, they're waiting for you.
I'm trying the best I can. It's just not loading fully.
Is it possible to take him out of turn because it is loading, but it's loading slowly?
Honestly, we have a very, very long hearing and another one directly after this. I will take one witness ahead of him, and then if he's not ready, he can submit written testimony.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. So in that case, who is the first witness? I'm sorry, what is your name?
So video.
Donna Salvideo, First Justice, thank you. This is a different order, and I know you're not Neil Sharing, so. I'm guessing, anyway. Would you give us your testimony while you're here today?
Thank you, and good morning, councillors. It is my great honor to speak today in support of Benjamin Adeyinka. While I could spend all morning extolling the many qualities that make Ben an exceptional nominee, I was instructed to be brief, so I'm going to leave it to you to read Ben's impressive resume. To be sure, Ben has unparalleled experience in all things related to housing. He served the housing court for nearly a decade, and he practiced as a private attorney before that. The depth and breadth of his knowledge is extraordinary, but he brings so much more than years of experience to the table. Instead, I want to tell you about Ben, the person, and the intangible qualities that make him so well suited for judicial service. Ben and I first met in 2018. I was a brand new judge and he was the housing court's administrative attorney at the time. One of our first interactions speaks volumes about Ben. I had an appointment at the John Adams Courthouse to have my photo taken for my trial court ID, but I couldn't get into the building without an ID. It was hot outside, well past lunchtime, so I texted Ben, who said he would be right over the Brook Courthouse. He quickly appeared, seeming to saunter up the stairs like nothing happened, coming up through Center Plaza. And keep in mind, this was all uphill. And as we talked, he began to perspire. First slightly and then more profusely. And then it clicked to me, Ben had just sprinted the whole way uphill and he didn't want me to know. because he wanted to come to my aid. When I asked if he ran over, he admitted he did. But he wouldn't have told me if I didn't ask. And that says that he was more concerned about answering the call and not one to toot his own horn. He wanted to make sure I had lunch and he wasn't concerned. So I'll keep tooting his horn. In his current role as DCA, Ben is responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the court together with the Chief Justice. The pressures of the job are weighty, but were particularly so during the pandemic. As you may recall, there was an ever-changing legislative and procedural landscape. The Housing Court had to invent and reinvent its policies, procedures, and technology to meet the times, and it counted on Ben's leadership to guide it through, and he did. Ben responded by collaborating, patiently listening to others, working long hours, and making thoughtful but very decisive decisions. There were times when he and I strongly disagreed on matters, but our conversations were always respectful. And although I didn't always get the answer I wanted, Ben took the time to hear me out. And these are the same qualities exhibited by an excellent judge. Ben understands the decisions made in the housing court each day affect the lives of real people. Having struggled with his own housing insecurity, Ben knows the importance of home. Judicial temperament is not something one can learn. You're either born with it or not. And a good judge treats people with respect and compassion. Ben is humble, empathetic. He's balanced. He exercises sound judgment. He listens and he cares. He's the total package. If confirmed, I have no doubt Ben will bring the same qualities to his new role as judge. It would be an honor to serve beside him as a judicial colleague. So I ask that you confirm my friend, Adeyinka, as an Associate Justice of the Housing Court. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Judge. Councillor Devaney.
Madam Chair, we have left out a portion of the hearing.
I'm chairing the hearing.
The councilors question all witnesses. I was not allowed to question.
You didn't raise your hand, Marilyn. I didn't know you wanted to, but do you have a, I would like to
Say, does anyone have any questions like?
I will be happy to, Marilyn. Would you like to ask a question of this
I would
witness?
like to ask.
I will bring you back. I will bring you back to them. Would you like to ask a question of this witness?
Oh, no, I'm concerned about the other witnesses to ask questions. So how long have you been observing this nominee?
I met Ben in 2018 when I first came to the Housing Court bench. And at the time, he was an administrative attorney. He since stepped into the role of deputy court administrator.
So you have been on the bench when he's come before you?
No, he was not an attorney by the time I took the bench. He was already in the administrative office. Well, he was an administrative attorney for the Housing Court, but his client was the Housing Court.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fear.
I just want to say thank you so much for hailing from the southeast Mass that were sometimes overlooked. And you do a terrific job. I don't go to housing court as a lawyer, but I know a lot of people that do. And, I get great reports, not only from your court south, but Metro South too, with Judge Shearing. And it's good to have you. It's good to be among these giants here, literally and figuratively, that came in support. I've never got so many calls favorably about a nominee as I have for this gentleman right here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge. Is Mr. Lively on? I think I see him up there. And then Marilyn, after he testifies, you're welcome to ask them questions.
I haven't heard from him. I'd like to Grace Ross question.
Okay, but first all right. Is Mr. Lively there? Let's go to Ms. Ross. Marilyn has a question for Ms. Ross.
I'm here. Thank you.
All right, Marilyn, feel free.
Before you time me, Madam Chair, I just want to say that whether people feel one way or the other about this nominee, Grace Ross has dedicated herself to housing. And without having a paid position, it must be 25 years. And I have great respect for Grace and her honesty and her respect for you and for everyone. Grace, I want you to tell us what violations have you, can you point to about this nominee that you have been watchful?
Well, the primary concern is his role training lawyers at Orleans, which is one of the two largest foreclosure law firms. And the lawyers at Orleans have filed documents into the registries of deeds and into the courts. And the perhaps most glaring example is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have around 60% of the mortgages. But if you look in the registries of deeds, they hide that fact, even though their congressional mandate requires them, if they get a note, to also get the mortgage. That means they would be, in fact, the owners of about 60% of the mortgages in Massachusetts. The practice is to hide that information unless and until Fannie or Freddie buy at a foreclosure auction. The SJC said, and of course it's part of consumer law, in the Ibanez case, that the homeowner had a right to know who the real interest, the real party in interest in the mortgage is. The Orleans lawyers create the documents that go into the registry for the foreclosure, and therefore must be responsible for misrepresenting to the registry of deeds that these mortgages were owned by Fannie and Freddie before they went to foreclose. And the foreclosure deeds that the Orleans lawyers write show on them taking the tax exemption that only Fannie and Freddie and Ginnie Mae are available to get from the state for the conveyancing fee of the foreclosure deed. And it sits right on the foreclosure deed that they've taken that exemption. They've therefore identified that the real mortgagee in interest pre-foreclosure was Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And he was training lawyers at Orleans at the time, and we have the documents and I will submit them, that Orleans had agreed to be a retained attorney law firm for Fannie Mae. Those documents that they signed required them by Fannie Mae to misrepresent, both in violation of their oath as a lawyer, an officer of the court, to the courts that the mortgagee was not Fannie Mae, and to misrepresent it in the registries of deeds. And that agreement required them to not tell other law firms that they were a retained law firm for Fannie Mae, so that no doubt they continue to hide these practices. But they appear in the foreclosure deeds that Orleans attorneys write and file into the registries. This is a massive illegality. And he said in his resume that he trained for compliance with state and federal law. Those practices alone represent not only a violation of the oaths of the lawyers who've been involved in creating these documents, knowingly not telling the truth about who the real mortgagee is, in violation of numerous Massachusetts laws and federal laws. And he says he was the compliance training lawyer at Orleans during this time period when the Ibanez decision came out and clarified that they could not engage in this practice. And he must have been part of all sorts of related issues. He is, in fact, on 2 cases where there was one of these hidden Freddie Mac mortgages, which was mortgagee and which had been foreclosed, and where the foreclosure deed itself has that tax exemption that is only available if the mortgage is already owned by Fannie, Freddie, or Ginnie Mae pre-foreclosure. So he was actively part of, at least in 2 cases, using documents that were a clear violation of law. And I don't know how in his training role for compliance, when 60% of the mortgages in general, and I don't have statistics percentage-wise, but a lot of the ones foreclosed are being done in violation of the oath of every single lawyer involved, and they've signed a private contract with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to lie to the courts and to lie in the registry. And it's a very serious matter we will deal with in other places, but he has been in a direct role to perpetrate those filings.
Okay, Mary,
Excuse me, I'm being timed, Grace.
you're not being timed.
Timing, so I can't ask another question, which is unbelievable. But I want you to talk about closures. That was the question I wanted to ask.
You wanted to ask,
That this nominee has been involved in carrying, what you just said. I'm sorry, I feel like a Federal Express man, but they voted to limit my questioning, so I have to stop.
I'm sorry, that what,
I will-
Councilor Devaney's mistaken. We did never vote. In fact, what I was asking you is if you had another question, but
I did.
then ask the question.
How long have you been monitoring this nominee to collect that information?
well, we met a number of years ago when we were trying, he was then general counsel of the statewide housing court division. We met with him because we had 3 cases where judges had reversed a dismissal well past the 10-day deadline for reversing a final decision, and spoke at length. But he told me at that point we had met before, and it's possible we met during the Alvarez case in 2011 and 12 when he was involved in supposedly trying to negotiate on behalf of Freddie Mac a repurchase. And although he wasn't saying it was Freddie Mac's loan, but anyway, so for a long time, I guess we've been somewhat crossing paths, but it's more about the general practices that he spoke of, that we have evidence that he was involved in, and the 2 amicus briefs to the SJC that reflect not necessarily, well, in Schumacher, he specifically said they should care about the market, not about following the statutes passed by the legislature.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I wish I could ask more, but
You can ask as many as you like, Marilyn. No one's timing you. No one's timing you. You can, do you have more questions?
pardon me?
Do you have more questions?
I think that unless, Grace, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, as I said, I will submit testimony, but I think his role in not equalizing the treatment of pro se litigants and those who are indigent or have disabilities in the housing court in his administrative capacity, especially as the Honorable Judge Salvidio just pointed to, the processes for during COVID, where people were put at a terrible disadvantage by not being told they had a right to translators, a disability under COVID, reasonable accommodation, and confidentiality as to indigency. And he will, as a judge, be facing those matters regularly with pro se litigants. And so far, the track record has led us up to the SJC again on the denial of people's rights as indigent litigants. We have a case in front of the SJC now, and the denial of folks with needing reasonable accommodations for disability. So it's very serious, and it's a problem in the judicial choices being made in the housing court every day. So we want to know what his role was in not making sure those things were equalized and people's access to documents that lawyers can get to, but pro se litigants cannot. So these are
Any other
serious.
council? Okay, I have a question. Ms. Ross. Where did you attend law school?
I didn't, and I don't need to in our legal system, right?
That wasn't the question. You're not a lawyer. Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Lively ready?
Don't need to be a lawyer.
Mr. Lively?
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Yes. I had some. Hi, can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay. Okay.
You ready
I
to
sent
tell me
in
when
some
you're ready to
exhibits.
start?
Are those available for the hearing?
I'm sorry, sir. I can't understand what you're saying.
Sent in some exhibits. Did you receive those?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sent some exhibits in, I even issue with the slides that he wanted to.
Oh, all those slides. Yeah, we received that. Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right, I just started.
Okay.
I just started.
Okay. I'm okay. So, I'd like you to thank the chair and the committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jay Lively from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I wanted to share with you a study that demonstrates the pervasive practices that have been going on since 2000. You may recall the housing crash in 2008, the major bank failures and bailouts that followed, as well as the costly bailout of AIG. AIG insured most of the securitized predatory mortgages that failed nationally. I have one of these supposed mortgages with Fremont. I understand now that the mortgage I signed with Fremont was not a legal contract by virtue of its predatory terms, the fact that Fremont was not the actual lender, and the questionable disclosure of MERS and various other infractions. In 2008, the Attorney General sued Fremont for these illegal practices, forcing them out of business. In 2012, my mortgage, still predatory, was supposedly assigned to a securitized trust with Deutsche Bank National Trust as trustee and MERS as the mortgagee. So what I sent you over is in example one for a legal assignment is, what an assignment should look like. And it includes consideration, the assigner, the assignee. It assigns a mortgage. Assignments can't assign notes. It lists the mortgage broker, the originator, the beneficial interest. It includes signature authority by the attorney of fact, citing a power of attorney previously recorded. It is dated, notarized, has the notary seal and license number.
Again,
Point of order, go ahead, Councillor.
focus once again, not on predatory lending and foreclosures, which is not something that we address or the housing board does, I understand. But the qualifications of this particular candidate, why,
No, I'm
speaking in opposition, why you feel he is not qualified to be on the bench. That's what this hearing's for, period.
I understand. I'm sorry if that's what I'm getting to now. So if you look at the second pages 4 through
Could I, if I may?
Yes, sir.
What do these cases have to do with this nominee?
Okay, well, this nominee, if you look on the assignments, you'll note that Orlin Moran PLLC was responsible for recording these three assignments. And
He was counsel for one of the organizations?
well, he trained, I'm not sure if he was personally the one that was his
Okay,
firm.
can we talk about your personal knowledge of this particular nominee and his qualifications to be a judge, Madam Chair? That's what we're here for.
That is what we're here for. Thank you. Please, yes, Mr. Lively, please address Councilor Kennedy's concern, because that's what we're here for. We've heard a lot that people don't like a law firm that he worked for. That frankly isn't, in my opinion, relevant. I need to know about your direct relations with him that make him unqualified.
Okay, I'd ask why that his law firm sent the assignments to Michigan in their
Sir,
when they
I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't know that he would know the answer. He was one lawyer at what sounds like a massive law firm. When you get out of law school and you have a lot of debt and you need to pay your loans, you get a job. And so he was doing his job. Now, we may not all like what his job was. He may not have liked what his job was, frankly, but it was his job. That's frankly, what is your personal experience with this man? That you don't like his firm. We understand that. All the witnesses have been clear. They don't like the firm.
This isn't just about the firm. It's the fact that there's been this pervasive fabrication of documents that is in the registry of deeds that nobody seems to understand. And I've gone through and listed a sample from the time period when he was working at the law firm. And
so is there, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to understand what you're saying. So your beef is with the registry of deeds?
My beef is with the the treatment of these mortgages that were never actually legal. And then they were assigned to
I
entities.
completely understand that. I work in this industry and I'm very familiar with fraudulent mortgages.
Okay, well, so I'm
Did-
just going to say, so I looked at 135 mortgages assignments from 2010 to 2013. And of the 100 I looked at, and then I went to the pooling and servicing agreements, none of the pooling and servicing agreements were fully executed. So
And
you have,
these were mortgages that he was involved in, these 100? That he personally
he
was involved
he
in?
was involved in like probably 16 of the
His
130.
firm, so him or his firm?
Well, his firm, I thought he was the lead
Okay,
trainer
thank you.
of the associate.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your clarification. I've taken some of your time, but I'm going to let you go for another minute because we're already almost at 7 minutes, but let's get to this so we can get to the rest of the witnesses.
Okay. I would just say that these are mistakes with the assignments are not just oops mistakes. There's strict recordation laws that have existed in Massachusetts since 1692, just like the statute of frauds when Massachusetts was only a colony. So if my concern is, it's clear, I've heard it said that he doesn't feel that housing court can decide title, but there's a lot of questions with title. And so how would he feel like these issues should be resolved in Superior Court, or what are people like me, and there's thousands of people like me, that are in this situation. And so what would he say to us as to, how we should proceed and what he feels is a solution for this situation?
Okay. All right. We're almost at 8 minutes now, and I did take probably 2 of those. So I am going to stop at this point and see if there are any other witnesses against, and then we will continue the hearing. Thank you so much, Mr. Lively. We appreciate your participation. Did you have a question, Marilyn? You had your hand raised. Do you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Any other people opposed? Hearing none, we will continue the hearing. Thank you, Judge. The next witness, please state your name and your relationship with and I'm hitting your timer. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Neil Schering. I serve as the first justice of the Metro South Division of the Housing Court. I've worked closely with Ben for over 6 years, and I can say without reservation, he has the experience, kind demeanor, diverse background, be an outstanding member of the Housing Court. In his role as Deputy Court Administrator, he's a unique nominee. He's a nominee that is part of court that he's seeking to be a judge on. In that role, he works closely with the Chief Justice of our trial court, Chief Justice Locke. He works closely with the Court Administrator Amarcino. He works closely with the Chief Justice of the Housing Court, the First Justices, Court Magistrates, Chief Housing Specialists, and the many members of our trial court justice system. In speaking to his colleagues today, words that describe Ben include honest, kind, professional. I wish I could clone him. He's my mentor, and he's awesome. You just take a look around this room. Folks here because reflect a person who understands the importance of our justice system. He's also a balanced person. He works closely with members of the bar for both landlords and tenants. He works closely with groups that advocate for both landlords and tenants. Many I will call Ben on his cell phone, and he'll answer 6, 7 o'clock at night in the administrative office working. He's committed. He's a hardworking individual. He also serves with me and Judge Salvideo, who on the Housing Court Education Committee. We've planned many conferences, and in that role, Ben has lectured to judges, to clerk magistrates, to housing specialists about the complex issues that we face as judges, as housing court judges. It's not an easy job. They're difficult situations. People come before us with incredible struggles. Many of them, the majority of the tenants are pro se. Ben understands that. We talk often about those challenges that both sides of the V face in our justice system, and particularly in summary process. He has the right demeanor, the right temperament to be a judge. I believe you have to. You have to love what you do, and you have to be able to listen to both sides. Ask anyone in this room or in our trial court system that has worked for Ben. He listens. He understands. He gives people a voice. I had the personal opportunity to be invited to an event at Chelsea where he was honored by his community. There were elected officials there. There were members of the clergy and leaders in the community. All a reflection of the man before you today. I admire him. I admire Ben for his hard work ethic, for his commitment and his passion for his work. I firmly believe that he has the experience, work ethic, and the temperament to be an ideal housing court judge. This court is extremely fortunate to have his leadership, and I respectfully urge this honorable council to vote favorably for his nomination.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
See you again, Judge. I think, there was some criticism of the housing court today. I don't think it was necessarily justified, because a lot of the criticism had nothing to do with anything you folks do, frankly. You guys did an amazing job under very difficult circumstances through the pandemic and post-pandemic. And I just want to congratulate you and your colleagues for the work that you've done over that period of time. I know that it was somewhat overwhelming at one point. And you guys really worked really hard to fix the problem. And I think you're in pretty good shape right now, from what I can tell, from what I've heard. All of that said, I still apologize for Kelleher.
I'll let him know, thank you, Councillor. As Ben often says, we're a small but mighty court. And part of our strength comes from the fact that we work well together. And again, you see it around you. This is a reflection of the man before you. You do work well.
We'll be appreciative what you do, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. Councillor Devane.
See you again. Councillor Devane.
Almost 7 years.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Well, I'm hearing great things about you. It was a proud vote. Tell me about what it means if this nominee was on a lot of the Freddie Mac trust cases. Tell me about that.
I'll be happy to. You're referring to post foreclosure.
Yes.
Right. It's a complex area. All right. If you take a summary process case, landlord tenant case, it's non-payment of rent. Did you pay the rent or not? Landlord, did you provide the appropriate conditions for the tenant? Post foreclosure is complicated because the landscape of mortgage litigation is just complex. Have a judge that understands that, has lectured about it, that has helped me and other judges, our colleagues, navigate the complexity of that. Not as an advocate, as was pointed out, we have many advocates that play roles on both sides of the V. But as a judge and part of our justice system, I have to have knowledge to understand the landscape, which Ben does.
So what would you say is the greatest attribute that this nominee brings to the housing court?
His compassion for people that he works with, people that come to him in his role as deputy court administrator. He's a very compassionate person.
Well, I've said it so many times, people are probably sick of me saying it publicly, but I don't vote for anyone if they don't have compassion. Whether it's for the parole board or whether it's a judge, they need to have compassion. But I'll tell you, as a past city councillor, I'm still getting calls about people in need of housing. That's the greatest need that we have right now going on. And, you know, the rent's so high and everything that's going on out there, it's very difficult for people. So housing has been very close to me to follow through the years to make sure that these people, you know, are getting the rights that they deserve. It's a difficult time, I know, and I thank you for your service.
Spira.
I just want to say thanks, Judge. It's great to see you again. And I remember that you took a pretty substantial pay cut to take this job for the public.
Single day, I regret it.
So thank you.
Single day.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Judge. And our next witness is, I'm not sure what order.
Good morning. Good morning. Honorable members of the Governor's Council, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you today on behalf of my friend and colleague, Bishop nominee.
What's your name?
Alex Valderrama, the Clerk Magistrate of the Eastern Housing Court. So I would like to thank the Judicial Nominating Committee for their tireless work in vetting our judicial officers, Deputy Legal Counsel Dara Kesselman, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, and Governor Haley for nominating Benjamin Adeyinka for Associate Justice of the Housing Court. And last but not least, it's good to see Valerie McCarthy for setting up today's hearing. I've known Ben in his capacity of the Housing Court Administrator since 2014, and before that as a lawyer representing post-foreclosure properties. Our interactions were limited then, but he was always amenable to mediation, alternative dispute resolution. He was not one to want to try every case and go in front of a judge and have a ruling. Ben has always been easy to talk to and solution-oriented. As a deputy court administrator, Ben's office is upstairs from me, so I'm kind of lucky. You know, I get to see him, I get to ask him questions. He's often in the hallway, he's often talking to court users, assisting people. And Ben does that for the employees. His office is always open. Anyone from a case specialist or case coordinator, he can go up and talk to. His office is, funny thing is his office is right next to the doorbell. His office is secured. Not anyone can just go in there. He answers the door. And I'm like, what are you doing? So people come up and, you know, say, I want to speak to the administrator. I am the administrator, you know, so it's a funny thing because he'd always refer them to my office as I'm in the building or our department, the housing specialist department. Ben is Benny. He's been very involved in the housing court expansion. I remember when, before it expanded, I've been in the court for over 22 years. We were going to community meetings. Ben was always there. We were going throughout the state, meeting with constituents and talking about, you know, the housing court and the things that we offer, the housing specialists, the referrals to different agencies. So Ben has always provided access to justice. That's his goal, and I think as a judge, he's going to continue to do that. He's going to continue to want the parties to work out solutions and refer people if he sees people with that might have some mental health problems or something that doesn't feel right. I think Ben is going to be an excellent judge. He's in the trenches. He's visible. he's not one of those persons that, will avoid you. So I think that's a great attribute for Ben, and for all the judges. It's great to have a judge that is accessible. You don't want someone to become a judge and you don't see him anymore. So I think he's going to be great for the housing court, and my court, the Eastern Housing Court, endorses him. Everybody loves him. We'd be sorry to lose him. Hopefully, if becomes a judge, he's been a big advocate for the housing court, the expansion. During the pandemic, we were tirelessly working. How do we not default people? How do we get people access to justice? How do we, just solution oriented, and I think he'll continue to do that as a judge. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Devaney.
Nice to see you again.
Yes, good to see you.
I really believe the clerk magistrate is the face of the court, really. And I thank you for your service in that vote.
Yes.
But I want to ask you, so you've been observing this nominee for quite a while.
Yes.
Okay, is there any case that you could point to that really impressed you about the way he handled it?
So, Ben has never shown any attitude. So I can't point to a specific case as we mediate like thousands of cases. But he's a listener, processes things. He doesn't jump to conclusions. And whenever there was an ask, this tenant needs this, or this, he was amenable to making a phone call or asking his client. So he wasn't, no, that's not happening, without even consulting with his client. So he was very respectful of the office staff, and people like him.
Well, your testimony means a lot to me. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any other councillors?
Thank you for coming this month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next witness, Atty. What's your name and your relationship to this gentleman, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Esther Hisha. I'm a housing specialist now in the Eastern Division. Prior, I was an administrative assistant in the administrative office, and that is when my journey with the court started in 2018, and that is when I met Benjamin Adeyinka at that time. And since then, he's been a mentor to look up to still to today. During my time in the administrative office, Ben has taught or shown through his leadership, patience, understanding there, and he's very big on showing the community that we're there. Community involvement was important to him since the beginning. We would do outreach programs with landlord organizations, tenant organizations, constables. He was very instrumental in making sure that the community saw that we were accessible and available to them. He also, anytime I had questions, legal questions, anything, I would go to him, and if he didn't know the answer, he went straight to the books. He would pull out a book and go to the section and show me what it is. He's, as Alex mentioned, Mr. Valderrama, he's easy to talk to. He's accessible to anyone. He made the team feel involved. He never made it an ego thing, and he never made it where one opinion mattered more than the other. Every team member felt heard, and that was important. And then he's going to bring that to the bench. He's going to make sure that every litigant, every attorney feels heard, and that they're not overlooked, and that's important.
Sure.
Thank you.
So much I want to say, because I just want to say instead of a piece of paper. So with that being said, yeah, I think he's going to be a great leader because he's shown that to our team. He's always made himself accessible for any interview panels, made sure to make that we achieved any goal that we wanted to. He pushed each and every single one of us to think beyond just the administrative office, and I'm speaking personally for myself. himself and Chief Justice Sullivan were instrumental in having me try law school and showing me that the glass is not capped at where I am. And so for that, I'm always going to be grateful to him.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fiera.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming in today because that flies in the face of what some other people alleged, that he's not making the court accessible and things like that. So your direct interaction with him over the years means a whole lot, and we really appreciate what you do and for you coming to fight today. Thank you.
Councillor Devaney.
Thank you. Nice to see you. And your testimony is heartfelt. Don't underestimate it. I just want to know, with your experience with this nominee, can you point to examples of how he assisted you as a housing specialist?
The housing specialist. Well, I'll say first and foremost, he's the reason I applied. He's the like, he told me the position was open. He said, take a chance, and because you can do this. And so with that, I did. And even before I got the position, he encouraged me to support the staff in the housing specialist department, and go down there and see what they do, because he honestly believed that the clerk's office was the front line. Housing specialists were the front line, and it's important for us as the administrative office to understand what that front line looks like, so that we know how to better support them as a part of the staff.
Great. How much involvement, daily or how often?
Prior to my permanent role,
With this nominee?
daily. I was the administrative assistant. So in my eyes, what that meant was I was kind of a right or a left-hand person, whichever you work with, but I was a year and a half now.
Okay. So it's hard to ask you, but in the past, do you think others have been, in his role, have been so attentive to the
So I'm going to be frank, I can't speak to prior, because I think he got into the role a few months after I was hired. But since he's been there, I can speak to what I've seen. He has made the administrative office more of a place where people are safe to come up if there's any complaints. Anytime a litigant would call, he made sure that each and every one of us gave them our full attention and made them feel heard, and took their space. Made sure that the administrative office was a door that was open.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Councillor DiPaolo.
Councillor, thank you for being here this morning. A lot of people don't know what happens in the housing court. There's a lot of good things that happen. I think a lot of people wouldn't even know what your role is. Could you really briefly describe what a housing specialist is?
Housing specialist?
Yes.
Sure. I would say that the housing specialist is the first thought that anyone makes when they come into the court, right? We are, I like to say, the safe haven for them to be able to have conversations, because that's the point of it. It's important that they understand the processes for them to come up with their own creative solutions prior to going in front of the judge, because that's going to be the best outcome that they're going to get.
So someone facing a housing crisis might come into housing court. Someone like you might be who they interact with at first. And our nominee has been, as you've described, managing this department and process to ensure that the public has access. In your experience, having worked there, yes.
Absolutely. I think it's important during the pandemic, right? The housing specialist department, as well as the whole department, they had to come up with ways to make sure that the access to justice piece was still there during the pandemic. And I think, and Chief Sullivan and the administrative office and the clerk's office came together to really make that happen. To utilize, make sure Zoom was available. That forward. There were so many things, so many pieces that had to be done. And a lot of that was due to justices, Ben, and the team coming together. And that's the space that Ben and James.
Excellent. Sounds like there's been a real focus on ensuring
yes,
that folks have access. Thank you. I appreciate you being here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we start with your statement, and I do want to call attention to the time. The Lieutenant Governor will be joining us at noon for actual meeting of the council, you are all welcome to stay here because this hearing will continue immediately afterwards. Since it's gone on, we will not be breaking. I have received a plethora of calls in favor of you. A couple, I will enter all of these written ones into the record. I'm not going to read them all because we don't need to do that. But I do have to say, some of them are from people I would not have expected. Paul Terrio, Judge Begaogian, I'm terrible at saying her name and I've known her for a long time. 13 different justices from the housing court, including the Judge Dalton, who is, considered for so many of us, the angel in the gold standard of compassion and understanding of these issues. The fact that all of these folks have signed on, but, for me, Judge Dalton holds a special place in access to justice and making sure people are taken care of. The one I received this morning, and I have to tell you, this really stunned me, is from Chief Justice Piper from the Land Court. And his enthusiastic, I will not go on to read this, but it will be entered officially into the record. Stunning, glowing recommendation for you. And that is a first. Honestly, that's a first for me. So go ahead and tell us who you are. And if you'd like to take a minute to introduce any family or friends here, feel free to do it.
Well, first off, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank everyone in the room. There's several people in the room. Some folks from the administrative office are here to support. You have a justice of the SJC. We have our new commissioner of Massachusetts Probation Services Department here as well. We have a chief housing specialist who I've known for several years, Suzette Fagan-Clark, who's been someone that I've talked to and actually helped to shape my career. I have my dad, who's always been in my corner, Moses Adeyinka. Literally, he's got my back. Smith, the first assistant clerk magistrate, the Eastern Division, the first African-American to hold that position. And I'm glad she's here. And I have my brother, call him Big Sam, he's back there as well. Got the Chief Justice of the Trial Court, Jeff Locke, that's here as well. Astor Hish, who you've spoken, who's testified on my behalf. I got colleagues, my deputy court administrators. I got Tom also, Joe Jackson, Jill Zida. I got Lauren Resnick, who's part of our family. She works in the land court, but we have so much in common, jurisdiction overlaps. So on that note, there's so many people that are here that I'd like to thank. George Gazal, Keith Tan, so many people, but I just want to address you all and respect your time. Good day. Thank you, councilors, for taking time and for your careful consideration of my nomination. My name is Adeyinka. I thank the Governor, Healy, the Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, Governor's Legal Counsel, Paige Scott Reed, Deputy Legal Counsel, Dara Kesselheim, Executive Director, Emily Gauthier, Administrative Secretary, who we all know and love, Valerie McCarthy, Joyce, who's always a friendly face to some of us that are nervous in coming into this process, members of the Judicial Nominating Commission, and members of the Joint Bar, the time and energy exerted on my nomination. Truly humbled and honored to be before you today, and I hope to gain your vote. I also want to thank, again, my parents. One is not here, but Elizabeth Adeyinka. I've introduced you to my dad, Moses Adeyinka, my brothers, my niece, and my nephews. Although my little sister is not here to see this moment, she passed away, unfortunately, in 2016. I know that she's here in spirit, smiling down. I thank the Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court, the Court Administrator, Chief Justice of the Trial Court, Jeff Locke, who is here, and my fellow Deputy Court Administrators, the Trial Court's Departmental Chief Justices for their support. I also want to thank my work family, Chief Justice of the Housing Court, all the members of the Administrative Office of the Housing Court, and the entire Housing Court family for their continued and unwavering support. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank my colleague and semi-retired friend, Timothy Sullivan. You see, this nomination would fill the judicial vacancy that he left upon retirement, and that is something that is special to me. Everyone that I've named, and countless others, have contributed something meaningful to my life and career, and I'm eternally grateful. My journey to this point has been an interesting one, to say the least. For context, I'll briefly explain my family's background so you have a better understanding of me as a person. My parents immigrated to this country from Nigeria in 1960s, and they met in high school. My parents had 4 children. For many years, the 6 of us, including my Uncle Sudji, all lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. We didn't have much, but we were happy. However, I could not escape the fact that violence was pervasive within the community we lived in. Growing up in Brooklyn during the 80s and 90s was amazing. I was exposed to various cultures, ethnicities, and I always wanted to be a lawyer. It was my secret passion, but I did not know or think that was achievable. You see, I have no family members that were lawyers or people in my community who looked like me who were lawyers. So I didn't know how to go about pursuing a law degree. I saw many of my friends get caught up in gangs, drugs, and violence. Most of my friends did not have 2 parents raising them. Some were being raised by their grandmothers. Like many teenagers, I wanted to fit in, so I hung out with friends and found myself skipping school and getting into trouble. Something I regret. My dad, like most immigrants who arrived in New York for many years as a taxi cab driver. Unfortunately, one day, while my father was driving his cab, he was brutally assaulted. My mother, who was on her way home from work, she worked the late shift as a nurse, she was mugged at gunpoint. I'm not sure if these events traumatized them, but unfortunately for me at that time, those things were just a part of life in Brooklyn. Crime, drugs, violence, and the need to survive were all elements that I was exposed to at a young age. My father was determined to send me far away from Brooklyn so I could have a chance at success. He helped me fill out college applications, and I eventually was admitted to the University of Buffalo. However, I was reluctant to leave Brooklyn. It was all I knew. But I'm thankful for my father's steadfast commitment to education and the pursuit of a better life. I left Brooklyn in 1998 to go to the University of Buffalo. My mom and I boarded a bus and took an 8-hour trek to Buffalo. And I was embarrassed to have my mother with me. You see, she still had a heavy accent. When we got off the bus, I felt like I was on another planet. Compared to the loud noises, concrete sidewalks, and cramped environment that I was accustomed to, this was peaceful. There were lots of trees, freshly manicured grass, and so much space between houses. Although I left Brooklyn, I still had not adjusted my Brooklyn mentality, which I'll explain. My mom helped me to settle into my dorm, and it was time for her to go. I tried to act tough, but my mom hugged me and left to catch the bus back to Brooklyn. Reality set in, and for the first time in my life, I was alone. I struggled to adapt to the college culture, but slowly I made Buffalo my home away from home. I found a few jobs on and off campus, which was helpful. In 2002, I graduated from the University of Buffalo with a bachelor's degree in communication. And my first real job was at a bank, doing new loan setup. I loved real estate. It became my passion. While at the bank, I transitioned into working with first-time home buyers through a program within the bank. At that time, I also became a real estate agent. Despite having graduated and beginning my career, regrettably, I was involved in an altercation when someone hit my car. You see, that altercation taught me that although I left my previous environment, I still needed to work on myself, particularly the way I reacted to conflict. This unfortunate incident is something I have learned from, and it also has helped to reinforce my empathy for young men and women who are exposed to the criminal justice system. In 2007, I went back to school to pursue a master's in business. In 2008, a close family friend of mine reached out about law school. He was going to the Massachusetts School of Law, and he knew I was interested in law, so he encouraged me to come and see the school. I took a flight back and toured the school, and I decided to enroll. So I packed up all my stuff without a real plan and headed to Massachusetts. See, my friend and I, we struggled for the first few months since he gave up his lease and we had no job. Each day turned into night, and we both lived out of our cars for the first few months. We outsurfed and tried to get by. We managed to stabilize our living situation, and we were both very dedicated to obtaining our law degree. Law school played an essential part in my academic and professional career. That school connected me to individuals who supported and guided me throughout my professional journey. For example, Connie Rudnick is someone who I sought advice from during law school and beyond. I graduated from law school in 2011 with my JD, and I, a kid from Brooklyn who grew up around crime, drugs, and violence, was that much closer to becoming a lawyer. While attending law school, I worked part-time in the law library, and I also worked full-time as a law clerk / paralegal at Orleans Moran PLLC. And despite working diligently to support myself, I suffered from some financial setbacks during that time. However, in 2011, after passing the bar exam, Orleans hired me as a full-time staff attorney, and I hit the ground running. I appeared in various states and federal courts of Massachusetts. I've handled motions, discovery, depositions, bench and jury trials, and settlement negotiations. During my time at Orleans, my biggest challenge was overcoming the public's perception of the clients that I represented. It was hard for people on the other side of the case to understand that I am not my client. I merely represent their interests. I overcame that challenge by remembering my parents' lessons to always treat everyone with respect and dignity, but perhaps most importantly, to be self-aware and recognize that there's real people behind every case with real lives, families, and struggles. I tried hard every day to respect the practice of law without losing myself and those fundamental things which make me who I am. In 2014, I became the administrative attorney for the Housing Court, a court which I love. I wanted to use my talents and expertise in real estate matters to help people. That was something that the trial court could offer. In 2018, I was selected as the deputy court administrator for the Housing Court, and I became a co-leader of the department. I was the youngest and the first person of color to be appointed a deputy court administrator. Working as a deputy court administrator, I gained a deeper understanding of the operations of the 6 divisions of the Housing Court. Fast forward to 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, and there was a time of great fear and uncertainty. I remember the late Chief Justice Ralph Gantz calling a meeting with all the court leaders and saying, "We cannot shut down." I'm proud of the work that we did to keep the courts running during that time. We didn't shut down. Rather, we adapted with technology to continue to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. It would be a privilege and honor to receive your vote to be a judge in the Housing Court. I have the knowledge, the expertise in housing and real estate matters, and I have contributed in countless ways to the real estate bar. I appreciate the importance of being thoughtful and deliberative, yet purposeful and decisive. I also bring a balanced perspective to this important role. I have strong interpersonal skills and I work well with others, but I'm not afraid of conflict and can manage situations with the appropriate level of professionalism. To wrap up, and as I previously mentioned, I can relate to both sides of the V. If confirmed, I would bring a balanced perspective to the judicial role. I'm comfortable sitting down and speaking to individuals from all walks of life. I've experienced personal setback, but I believe we can all change our outcome in life if given the right access to opportunities. See, I sit here for you today, the son of immigrants, who never imagined in his wildest dreams that I'd be before you today. Despite that, I'm honored to receive this nomination, and I'm ready to serve the people of the Commonwealth. Now, I know I have much to learn, but I'm thankful that I have so many resources. Some of them are in this room that will help guide me when needed. I want to thank the councilors. I'd like to thank Madam Chair for all of your time and consideration. I know the work you do is important, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding my nomination.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we know where the LG is?
I don't know that we were running a little bit late, but I can grab her if you're ready, if you want to take a
Well,
break.
I'm thinking this might be a nice time to break if she's ready.
Do that.
Do you want to start, Terry?
So I only got a couple of minutes.
All right, let's start with council candidate, the starter.
Been sitting here for almost 14 years, looking at this angle, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody more proud than your father today. I'm watching him, he's beaming. You may not have faith that you would be here today and become a judge, but when I can help like your father, he did. He was sure that you were going to do something, and that's why he pushed you so hard. That was an incredible opening statement, very moving that you gave. And you certainly have an incredible story. We spent a long time on the phone talking last week, and answered all of my questions. I think some of the criticisms you got today weren't really about you at all. I don't think the people really know you that were criticizing you. And some of the things that they did criticize you about directly seem to be the exact opposite of everything I've heard and seen. So there's no question in my mind that you're a very passionate person, and you will be with the people who are in front of you. I received a lot of calls. I made a joke about Judge Keller, my friend for 3.5 decades, but even before you were nominated, received a call from the Chief Justice and a number of people had absolutely nothing but incredible things to say about it. Your mother and father should be very huge deal from where you've come from. You're going to be a black wolf and I'm pretty sure you will. I'll be voting. Very proud.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy, and thank you for the conversation we've had. It helped guide me through this process, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to suspend the hearing just until the Lieutenant Governor is finished with us. So everyone stay put.
Nobody leave the
Go
building.
ahead,
Calls to order. Appreciate the pause in what sounds like a really good work. So just so that we can begin our General Assembly meeting. And I'd like to recognize Councillor Jacobs for a prayer and for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment of contemplation for wisdom for us and the work we do and for resolution conflicts around the globe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have too many things on our agenda, so this really will be a brief interruption. I'd like to recognize Councillor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So moved, Governor.
Seconded by Councillor Devaney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We, at this point, would like to recognize Councillor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Devaney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. One brief announcement, just want to let folks know that at 3 p.m. In the ceremonial office, we'll be administering the oath of office to newly elected Senator Peter Durant as a member of the Senate. I just wanted to make sure folks were aware that that was happening today. And I think at this point, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by,
I'm just ready to get back there.
made by Councillor Akinella, seconded by Councillor Duff.
Yeah.
All those in favor, all those opposed? The ayes have it. I know when I'm not wanted.
Like the big chair.
Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, folks. Thank you.
Immediately. Did I lose my nominee?
I walked it.
Does he think he should? Some more.
He's not
Ianella asked if he would speak.
No questions. I gotta tell you, I've been here a few years before Canada. That was impressive. That was damn impressive. What a compelling story. You're tough soldiers, I gotta tell you. What a compelling testimony.
These guys adore me.
Oh, phenomenal. It's a done. And your family, your parents, I'm sure they're so proud of you. I just want to let you know, he comes before the council next week. I'll give you the world.
Thank you, Council. Council Fiera has asked if he can go, so.
Because I have no questions. So I just want to say you're an excellent nominee. I'm really glad you put in for the job. You have a really compelling story that we don't hear ever. So you definitely have my vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor DiPaolo, thank you for being so generous and allowing these others to go before you. You have the floor.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Councillor. Good afternoon. I appreciated our conversation, and I won't duplicate what's been said, but you have a compelling story that enhances your nomination, but it's your experience in your work and current role in your entire career that makes you qualified to be here. My first job out of law school, I was defending cases that I didn't feel super great about. I believe very much in access to justice. Part of that is that every party in our system have access to representation and counsel. And so I respect the work you've done throughout your career. You just want to touch on, we've heard a lot from the housing specialist and from some of the sitting justices about the challenges in the housing court, the pro se litigants who you deal with. And we heard, in discussions leading up to this hearing, I've heard that housing court is getting busier again. Is that accurate? What's your take on what's going on in the housing court right now?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I think that's a fair assessment. As you know, for the past, from 2020 to 2020, the caseloads were not what they were pre-pandemic. They are reaching what they were pre-pandemic. Right now, I looked at the case findings, in FY '23, we had 39,000 total cases filed in housing court. Of that, I think 33,000 were summary process cases. For the housing court, summary process is about, the bulk of what we do. And just to explain that in plain language, it's a landlord-tenant eviction case. The numbers are trending up, but they're not, in my opinion, anywhere close to some of the estimates of what they could have been.
I apologize, I got distracted for a moment. I don't want to belabor things because your witnesses have been great. The people, the phone calls and the emails we've gotten about you are great. I respect the concerns of the folks who are here testifying. I do feel that some of the concerns I sympathize with have solutions that don't lie necessarily with you or with the housing court. So I look forward to supporting you. And I want to actually thank the governor and her administration, her legal team. I think that we have you because the people put this governor into place. And folks who feel strongly about other challenges in the system need to activate themselves and elect people who will do whatever it is they want to see happen. For now, I'm very grateful to see you in that chair, and I look forward to voting for you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you. It's good to see you again. I want to thank you for your generous time coming out to meet with me. And we talked at length about many, many things, and then follow-up phone call as well. And just appreciate all the time you gave. I have also received many a call and email in support of your nomination, many from housing court justices and beyond. And actually this morning had a conversation with one of my Western Mass Housing Court judges, Justice Kane, First Justice Kane, which was incredibly supportive, positive. And he highlighted things that you talked about in your statement, but that you've also had witnesses speak to about your demeanor. Talked at length about his experience of you when you visited, that you visit everyone in the court, the judges, the clerk's office, the court officers, that top to bottom, you touch base with everyone and make everyone feel seen, heard, and respected. And I think that's speaks to who you are as a person, how you conduct yourself. I also, in a conversation with Chief Justice Horan, she also mentioned the need for adding more judges in housing court for handling the load that you all be overwhelmed by. I just want to highlight a couple things we did talk about that I think lend to your candidacy. First, your story that you shared, beyond being one that is just so potent, speaks to, we've talked about this, that you have experience with having struggled, with having come from a community where you've seen a whole slew of challenges, and you've had personal challenge, and all of that I think lends to who you are and how you conduct yourself, and the compassion and empathy you bring as personal empathy, not just an intellectual empathy, which I think is so needed on the bench. And so I very much appreciate that. And we talked at length about access to justice during the pandemic and beyond the pandemic. And we disagree on the issue, but I really appreciated, and I fully see the point that you made when we were discussing collecting racial data for the courts, and the danger of dissuading those who might be undocumented from availing themselves of the justice system if we're collecting that data. And I really appreciated that you made that point, and that you are thinking about things from such a, yes, we need the data to understand the trends, but then there's a danger too in limiting those availing themselves of our justice system. So I appreciated that. I don't really have questions for you. I just wanted to share all of that, we talked at length about so many things that could go on forever, but I don't want to because I think we've gone on long enough today. But all that to say that your nomination is one that represents a wonderful addition of diversity to the bench. And the only thing I will say, in not in opposition necessarily as a complaint, is that I hear that you are slated to serve in our Hampden County Housing Court. And as a representative of the Western Mass District, I am disappointed that we don't have a nominee for Hampden County from Western Mass. I think you definitely have a representation of similar communities, but Western Mass is unique in many a way, and so you're not of our community. So I just want to register basically a whining complaint.
Your advocate. Your district counselor.
And I wonder how long, given the commute that I have, it gets old fast, how long you'll be happy making that drive regularly. Having said that, I will conclude with my whinge and say that I do very much admire who you are, and look forward to you serving with justice and compassion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Devaney.
Nice to see you again. I think it was about 3 hours we spent. I feel I know all about you, and your father hasn't stopped smiling since he came in, and he's so proud of you. I especially am excited about your appointment, besides all your qualifications, because I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I know what they struggle with, and I understand what your family did. And, you know, when I look for someone, especially in housing, besides all the other judicial appointments, you know, I look for a judge who has life experience. And you're bringing that life experience because you have experienced all of those housing problems and doing without. And I love the idea that you're going to be there for the needy, no matter what their status is. And I wanted the opposing comments laid to rest here, and they have been addressed, and I think that's good. But to see the overwhelming support you have, and to have Judge George here, and also proud vote, and also Justice Law. I mean, he called, he's over the moon, and for them to come to support you. And all of the letters that I have gotten, it's just amazing. But housing is so important, and I don't think, I've been here 25 years, I don't think I've had anyone come before me that has more understanding of the need for housing as you have, because you've lived it. And I'm just so pleased that the governor and lieutenant governor has appointed you. I thank you for applying. And, you know, I think that the housing court, most especially now with whatever is happening, we need someone like you. And as I said, I look for compassion. And when I met with you, it was amazing. And in that conversation, I almost had tears in my eyes with the conversation that we had. So I can identify with your family, and you've made your father proud, and he has to take a lot of credit for you being here. And I think it's wonderful, and you know, your whole family supporting. So I'm going to be very pleased to be voting for you. And again, thank you for all the time that you've afforded me. And you are in the Belgian Waffle Hall of Fame. With Justice Hines and Justice Island and Justice Bud, all of them. But I don't have room in the diner to put the names. But I'd be very pleased next week to vote on your appointment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just wrap up by saying thank you for applying. You have lived experience that we rarely see before us for this particular court, is a challenging place to be. My gratitude very much to the governor's legal team and the governor for this nomination. The nominations we've had have been out of the park so far. So with that, I adjourn this hearing.